So now we come to the principles of effective communication. Now let me tell you here that when we cover this heading, this is actually a life skill. This is not just a part of any curriculum. So we have to consider that this topic, this heading is for life, and we need to apply this effective communication, whether it is written or whether it is spoken language. So the first, C of effective communication is correctness, to be correct. So whether it is written or whether it is spoken, we need to be very accurate. We need to be free from we need to be very clear, right? And obviously there should not be any ambiguities. Secondly, we need to be, there has to be a clarity. The message has to be very clear and easily understood. Third is conciseness, to be precise, as much as is necessary. There should not be any unnecessary details. Then the message has to be complete. Completeness is very important, Nothing should be left unanswered. Everything should be answered. And then consideration. Consideration is also very important because it amounts to empathy. We need to consider, we need to step into the other person's shoe and even understand his or her plight. And we have to be mild, we have to be just. Then comes concreteness. The message has to be concrete. What does it mean? Concrete means that it has to be based on facts and figures. It should not be just about anything. It has to be very well researched. Then comes courtesy. Courtesy means that the message, whether it is spoken, whether it is written, has to be very polite. It has to be with a lot of respect. So because obviously respect, politeness, would always lead to success, and obviously it will also give way to very open communication, which is very important. There'll be an easy flow, there'll be consistency in communication, which is very important. Next is modes of communication. Now what do we really understand by modes? So now we can say that there are two modes of communication. First is the verbal mode and the second is the non-verbal mode. Verbal has to do with all that is spoken and all that is written. So spoken here is, as I'm speaking here, is a part of verbal communication. So that constitutes only 10% of communication. And written could be in the form of letter, it could be in the form of memorandum, it could be in the form of reports, any WhatsApp messages that you all are doing, any telephonic message, any video conferencing, anything. And this is what it means when we say verbal. Verbal is all spoken and all written. Then we come down to non-verbal. Now it is said that 10% of our body language and of our constitution is verbal. 90% of us is non-verbal, and in that 40% is paralanguage or paralinguistics and 50% is non-verbal, which means non-verbal actually means we are not using language, something which is beyond language. So that could amount to kinesics behaviors, it could amount to prosemics, it could amount to paralanguages, paralinguistic features. Para actually means beyond language. So something where language is not used. And then, of course, now let us, understand it in depth, what it actually means. So everything, non-verbal is everything where we use our body language, and it could be our tone, it could be our voice, it could be our facial expressions, it could be our posture, it could be our gesture, it could be so many things. So now as we enumerate here, you can see that this is just the different kind of subheadings to non-verbal, which we are going to cover one by one. And we really need to understand that non-verbal communication, a lot of success of any organization depends on non-verbal communication. So now we have to see that how this really goes. We need to really understand. So the first here is kinesics. Now what is kinesics? The word comes from kinetic energy. So any energy where there is movement, where there is force. So here any physical movement in any form is kinesics. So kinesics has to do Kinesics has to do with personal appearance. Kinesics has to do with postures. It has to do with eye contact. It has to do with time. It has to do with space. It has to do with paralinguistic features. So it has to do with all the body movements. Paralanguage. So now let us understand what is paralanguage. Paralanguage is paralinguistics, something beyond language, which I just said. It also means vocalic. So it can, modify meaning. It can give very nuanced meaning or convey a certain emotion. And it is very, very effective and very vital for effective speeches. So here it includes pitch. Pitch could be pitch is actually the level of intensity, the level of sound. So the pitch can be high or the pitch can be low. Then we also have the rate, like the speed at which we speak. Then we have the volume. The volume can be high, the volume can be soft, depends upon the space that we are delivering our presentation. Supposedly if the area is very large, and we are disseminating the information to very large audience, then we have to be very loud, and the volume also has to be loud. The rate of speech depends upon the matter that we have. We have to go with certain pauses and certain silences, and then comes the tone. The tone here could be, supposedly I'm teaching here on this platform, so my tone has to be educational. Tone can be angry, tone can be aggressive, tone can be varied, various tones that we can have. Then of course pauses and silences are also very important, and that has to do with sometimes when do we usually pause, when there's a hesitation, when there's a certain disrespect, or there's a certain respect. So these are the we also have non-lexical tokens. So the non-lexical tokens has to do with the various sounds that we can produce, like sound and sound, and even for that matter well. The word well is not very well articulated. So these are all non-lexical tokens. So obviously when we talk about paralanguage, so we can understand the mood, we can understand the situations, we can understand the emotions, and it's a speaking language, definitely, and it's very important too. Then we have prosemics. Prosemics comes from the word proximity. Proximity is closeness and the use of definitely the space. So here when we communicate, it is very important that we need to keep a certain distance. The distance is very important, and we should know exactly how much distance to maintain, whether it is in close relationships or whether it is impersonal relations. That depends. Now we have to decide how much distance we need to create. So when it comes to definitely intimate distance, it could be some 0 to 18 inches, it could be hugging, it could be close relations. Then we have personal distance, could be about to 18 inches to 4 feet, like during Corona times, we were supposed to maintain a distance of 4 feet to 6 feet. That was very ideal because we could have contracted the disease. So depends, what the situation is, and the social settings, the social norms, the situation that we are in, the kind of personality that we are encountering. We have to be very careful. There has to be a certain degree of respect. Then also there are various cultures. In various cultures we have various space effects. So obviously it has to do with the level of familiarity. And lastly, we can say that the public distance, supposedly there's a public platform, we have a stage. So we have on the stage we have the speaker, and then we have the audience. So the distance between the stage and the audience should be at least minimum to 12 feet, and maximum it could go to 24 feet. So that is the ideal distance. So space language is very important for ideal communication. Then comes chronemics. Now what is chronemic? Has to do with time. So time is very important. For example, you as students, when you sit in the class, you keep checking your watch, isn't it? So don't you know that time is also a language? You are checking the time, you want the period to get over, so that is also something telling about you. So obviously sometimes some of us are very, very regular, very punctual, when it comes to time. Some of us are not punctual, we are lazy and we lose time. And so definitely time, kind of is definitely a marker to success. And time also in different culture means different things. For example, the role of time in communication and with various culture varies. For example, we have monochronic cultures. Now, monochronic culture is where time is linear and punctuality is valued, and where the employers and the employees, they do one work at a time. In a given time, in a single time, we can do only one work. And such cultures are like, is followed in US, in Germany. And then we have the polychronic cultures. Now, what is the polychronic culture? Polychronic culture is used in Latin America and also in Middle East. So here we can do multitasking, because obviously multitasking in various cultures is also important. For multitasking means that here, when I'm at the same time that I'm talking to you, I can be also using my phone, I can be doing some other work. So all at one single time we can be doing multiple work. So obviously waiting time and pacing is all very important, and it communicates a certain priority, it communicates a certain status. So here depends what the culture is. So whether it could be monochronic, it could be polychronic cultures. Then oculesics. Now let us understand what oculesics is. Like, it's eye behavior, communication through eyes, and we all know that eye is window to the soul. So obviously, the focus of the eye, the gaze, here the gaze is very important. The way that we gaze, the way that we look at others, whether it's respectful, whether it is intimidating, it could be threatening, it could be so many things. Sometimes we dilate our pupil, we could be very in a state of shock, we could be surprised. So eyes also speaks a lot. It is a very important part of communication. It sort of regulates all our interactions, and obviously it also signals certain interest and attention. We can turn our gaze to left, we can turn our gaze, we do not like someone and somebody enters the room, we can turn our gaze to the left because we do not want to see the person. So you see, the gaze is very important, and through our gaze we express so many varied emotions. Sometimes our gaze could be lowered. It could also mean droopy eyelids, could also mean that we are very sad and we are going through some sort of anything, any mishap or any sad state of being. So, and sometimes eyes also kind of connotate and suggest some kind of power, some kind of dominance. So also at times that we avert people when they walk into the room. Sometimes we stare into people, probably we do not like them much. So eyes speaks a lot and says a lot. So it's a very important part of communication. Next is facial expressions. Now, what is facial expression? It is a very powerful form of non-verbal communication, and it conveys a lot, many emotions, attitudes, many reactions. And it is said that face obviously is an index of the mind. So there's a terminology called facial action coding system. Now this facial action coding system, we had two American scholars, and they were not just research scholars, but they are now one of the world's most renowned psychologists. So we have Paul Ekman and Wallace Friesen. So they kind of had started this facial action coding system, and they say that via the face, via the expressions, so many traits and so many qualities can be recognized across all cultures. So here we can say, so obviously some facial expressions definitely are universal to all the cultures, but there are other facial expressions that are not universal to all the cultures. And Paul Ekman and Wallace Friesen has given some 6 very important facial expressions which is used in almost all the cultures. So they could be that of happiness when we smile, then it could be sadness when we frown upon, or some kind of through our lips, like downturned lips, could also suggest sadness. Then being angry If we are angry, we can, sometimes frown upon. Our jaws can be very clenched. So our face tells, all this, that whether we are angry, whether we are sad, whether we are happy, whether we are surprised, could be, raised eyebrows and, very wide eyes. And obviously, if we are fearful, our mouth could be very wide open. Our eyes also would be all rounded and wide. And if there's, we feel very disgustful, or, something we find very disgusting, or not, we're not very happy about, then, we can also, kind of show it through our nose, kind of wrinkling our nose and raising our upper lip. So you can say that the facial expressions, they can speak so many of our emotions, and these emotions, definitely these 6 emotions are common to all cultures, and there are even other facial expressions which varies according to cultures. So then more on this is like, obviously when it comes to facial expressions, it also gives very immediate, very honest feedback, whenever there's a communication. Even you can say that when the words are not spoken, so the face speaks a lot, and definitely it enhances, it can contradict. So and then we have also this term facial micro expressions. So now what is this facial micro expressions? So these are very quick expressions and very involuntary, facial expressions that can reveal our true emotions. And these emotions are sometimes even we are not aware of. Very quick, signals and symbols that we can show through our face, and sometimes that we are usually hiding. And this just comes from nowhere. So facial micro expressions are also a very important part of communication. Coming down next to gestures and postures. Now gestures, we need to really understand what is a gesture and what is a posture. So gesture is also a form of non-verbal communication, and obviously gestures has to do with our body parts. Now what are the body parts that are involved in gestures? It could be our fingers, it could be our hands, it could be our head, or it could be our limb, and it could also be our face, definitely. So different body parts we use as gestures. So and postures it could be the complete alignment of the body, like right from the head, the shoulders, the hands, then the torso, then the limbs. Everything should be aligned. The body has to be in a very balanced position. Obviously, posture really matters. It depends, how our carriage. Posture means our carriage, how we carry ourselves. It is our attitude. It is our positioning, of the self. How we sit in a classroom, whether we are sitting upright, straight, or we are slouching ourselves and reclining ourselves and sitting, because all this speaks of ourselves. Gestures and postures are speaking language. It tells a lot about us. So obviously, in gestures, we also have, now let us understand what is emblems and what is illustrators and regulators and adapters. So emblems are sometimes that, we do not use words, and we use emblems like thumbs up, or the victory sign, the V for victory, which we make with our fingers. So we need not just, speak. Supposedly somebody asks you, you've got a new job, and they say, how was your job? Then you will say it's a good job. So instead of saying good job, what will you say? You just put your thumbs up. And that is just enough, that your job is good. So this is what emblem means. Then illustrators. Now what is illustrators? Sometimes, while we speak, we also use our hand gestures, and it could be various hand gestures that we can use to kind of demonstrate some size or some shape, or it could also be like it could be also in the form of illustrations. Illustrators is illustrations. So children books have so many drawings, so many images, so even that is also illustrators. We also have these softwares are also illustrators. Then we have regulators. What is regulators? Regulators is, these are the signs and symbols that controls the flow of conversation. For example, if I'll ask you, have you understood? Then what will you say? You will not say, but you will just nod your head, or you will just shake your head to indicate something, like you are trying to tell me that yes, you have understood or you've not understood. So this is what it means when we say regulators. It just, control the flow of conversation. Then we have adapters. What is adapters is like? the unconscious, body movement. Sometimes, for example, that we are waiting for someone, and what we really do is that we have a table and we have a finger and there's a glass, and what we do is that we use our finger and we keep tapping the glass as if, because obviously there's nothing much to do, so it's like a time pass, and then obviously it signifies that I'm waiting for someone. So obviously adapters, can be linked to certain emotions. It could also be linked to certain stress. Sometimes stress in the form of when we forget an answer in the examination, we usually scratch our head. So obviously, adapters also signifies, and it's a language. Then obviously when we come to postures, you have to have a very open body posture. Open body posture means inclusive body posture. You have to have a smile, you have to greet, and open body posture avoids crossed armed and crossed legs. So obviously the entire carriage of your persona should speak of openness, should speak of confidence, and you should not be defensive. That is very important through our posture. So postures are very important. We can say that they're very important part of our personality and definitely communication. So here is just this slide just speaks of the various gestures and postures and what it really means. Like for example, biting the nails that you can see here means, when we usually bite, it usually means that we are insecure, and also speaks of some kind of nervousness. Then of course, since body language is very important in communication, so you can see here that like if we have crossed our hands and have put it at the back, it could amount to being very authoritative. So here we can say that we have this image, we have the diagram here of the types of body language. So like the way that we talk, and the way that we pause, and the way that we are silent in between, the postures, the slouching, the appearances, the tidiness, the untidiness, the hand movements, for example, like the way that we are waving, we are trying to express something, our head movements express something, the sound, the laughter, the cry, the wailing, there's an entire language, more than language. When we don't speak, not speaking is more language than speaking, is what it really means. So obviously even shaking hands, the way that we shake hand is so important, the body contact is so important. Then comes haptics. Haptics actually means touch. Now it's a touch language. This is very important part of communication. Again, why? Because the use of physical contact in communication has to be, kind of dealt with, and we need to be very careful because it varies, it has certain functions. Functions could be professional, it could be social, it could be political, it could be very personal, it could be impersonal. It depends, what sort of relationship that we are having, and whether it's friendship, whether there's warmth, whether it's a degree of coldness, whether it is intimate, whether it is professional. So we have to be careful, how we are going to use our ability of touch with people. And there are a lot of, cultural variations also when it comes to, touch. So we have, for example, we have high touch culture. High touch culture is very synonymous to Middle East, and definitely in America also there's a high touch culture. There's a lot of hugging and kissing, and that is how people greet and meet. But there are other cultures, which we say that they are low touch cultures. Low touch cultures is more prevalent in Northern Europe, and also of course Northern Europe side is very, the low touch culture is very prevalent, because obviously there we see that the touch is very brief, it is very minimal, and only probably touch is in the form of only handshakes and nothing more. Then comes the physical appearance. Now the physical appearance indicates it. So this is, we say that the first impression is very important, is the last impression. So, how we dress up, how we groom ourselves, how we present ourselves is also very important. It speaks about us, and it also points out to our nature, to the various interests that we might be having, to the kind of personality that we are having, or the kind of profession that I am in. It also points out to certain, religious factors, to certain cultural factors. So our clothing is very important, and accessories are important. It speaks of certain status. Supposedly the kind of dress that I am wearing, it speaks of, my status. It could speak of my being very professional. If I'm in a suit, if I'm in a tie and my hair is all tied up in a bun, probably I'm a very thorough professional. It speaks of my being very professional. Then obviously, the body types and attractiveness, obviously that is, that has to do with our perceptions, that has to do with our understandings, how we want to present ourselves, how attractive do we want to be to the world, and this also amounts to certain biases and certain prejudices. Then artifacts. Now what is artifacts? If you understand the word or its meaning, it actually means certain tools that has some kind of, a historical and cultural relevance. Tools that are made by man himself, so these are the personal objects that we use to communicate, and this is a part of our identity, and this is a part of our preferences. What are the things that we would prefer in life? For example, the kind of furnitures that we have in our houses, the kind of jewelry that we choose and that we wear in certain situations, and the kind of, all personal items that could, it could be anywhere, whether our houses, whether in a professional settings, the decor, everything, it connotates, it suggests certain power, personality and culture. So it has to be very appropriateness. Appropriateness means, the suitability, how suitable the kind of, whatever that the style that we are wearing, it has to be very suitable as per the context, as per the situation, as per the person. Then obviously the climate has to do with the surroundings. The surroundings are very important. Where have we gone and how are we representing ourselves? What jewelries are we wearing? What clothes are we wearing? How are we using these artifacts is important. Then also there's micro environments. Micro environments could be very small scale, small spaced habitats, how we are using it, the immediate periphery and the immediate small spaces that we are in a very professional settings could be micro environments, and how we are using it is important. Then obviously scent is olfactics, which we'll just do in the next slide. Scent is also a very important part of communication. Then color and lighting. What is color and what is lighting? The kind of color that we are using, the combinations, the primary colors, the secondary colors, the lighting, whether what sort of lights that we've used in an environment, it's the light, the yellow lights or the white lights, the tube lights, the bulbs, what are we using? It's all, speaking of certain qualities, certain attributes, certain, nature that we have and that we profess. So obviously we can say that, artifacts are very important and it speaks a lot about us. Then we come to olfactics, which is also a part of artifacts. So because obviously olfactics has to do with scent, the power of the olfactory communication, the power of the scent that we use, and that also conveys certain messages. It also certain, influences certain behaviors. It can also trigger certain emotions within us, and then we also, and it does it in a way that we don't even really know it, because there's a sudden smell that comes in the room, and then suddenly there's a certain kind of certain emotion that we kind of evoke. There's a certain emotion that is evoked within us, and we don't really realize it. And then obviously we give cues through non-verbal cues is what we give, and we kind of through we might not like it, so we can just scrunch our nose, and obviously sometimes the smell is good, so obviously it also then we feel very good. The perception is that the feel good factor could be there. Then there are pheromones also. Now what is pheromones here? Basically pheromones is more used in the animal world because they Obviously, the pheromones in the animal world could be in the form of alarm calls. You must have heard the alarm calls in the jungles. So that is the way, the animal kind of give alarm to the other animal. Suppose there's a tiger and the deer gives the alarm call, so the other deers would come to know that there's a tiger, there's a danger about, in the social setup. So pheromones are also used by human beings in the form of, the sweat is there, the fluids are there, the waste matter is there. So obviously these also, would bring about certain reactions in us. So of course, and what is environmental cues? Environmental cues has to do with, like, if you go to certain restaurants and we go to certain retail stores, you would see that there are people, who are spraying these, scents, all about, and making the place, smell very good. So that, you can say, enhances the dining experiences, and also it gives a more welcoming kind of an atmosphere. So definitely, perfumes and scents are a very important part of communication. Now, above all this that we've done, the non-verbal cues that we've done, now coming down to this important, subheading, which is silence. Now, silence is also a language, and we cannot say that silence is not a language. It's a very important part of ourself, and that it indicates so many varied, umpteen emotions. And when we are silent, we could be hostile. When we are silent, we might be disagreeing. When we are silent, we could be profound. When we are silent, we could be, in a state of horror, in a state of surprise, in a state of sadness. There could be a tragedy. It could also indicate a certain respect. Oh, we are thinking, we are lost in thoughts. Silence could also mean that, some intentionally we want to be rude to someone, and we want to show that, we are unhappy with someone, that intentionally, we can be silent. So it's a kind of a listening space. Silence is a listening space. Here, people all about you, all around you, will try to understand you, will try to understand your silence. And definitely, when you're silent, the other party, whosoever comes and would meet you, would know exactly why you're silent. So definitely, and also at times, silence also indicates empathy. Empathy is, that the other person is trying to tell. Supposedly, I'm silent, I'm quiet, I'm not speaking, and my friend comes and walk into a room, and then she understands. She is empathetic. She knows why I'm silent. She knows that I'm disturbed. So you see that silence is a very important part of our communication. And then we have signs. Now, signs could be, like in the form of spoken or in the form of written form. So, like we have the traffic signs. The traffic signs we all know, because obviously we are communicating with these signs every day. While on the roads, we know what we have, the various signs in the form of red and blue and green colors, and the signs and the symbols along with it is almost there for us to see that yes, we have to stop, we have to go forward, or we have to wait. So all these signs are already there before us. Then obviously, like we make certain gestures, like gestures in the form of thumbs up, in the form of waving. So these are signs. We want to call somebody, we will not say come here, we just wave to the other person, and the person will just come to you. Then also facial expressions are there. Facial expressions in the form of smiles, in the form of frowns, in the form of so many varied emotions that we can express. So of course, a sign is also a language, and sign could be a language for the impaired. Now, the impaired, who are the impaired people? The impaired people here could be those who are the hearing impaired is there, those who are with speech impaired, or those who are deaf and blind individuals. So sign is also sign language. They have a language. For example, we have Braille for the blinds. So obviously, why, the sign language has been developed for the hearing impaired or for the speech impaired or for the deaf and the blind, because obviously we want to socially include them, because we also want to provide equal access to these people, because obviously they need to be socially included they need to be educated, obviously they need to go in and work and to have a social life, and they also need to be encouraged, and they also need to be very confident, and they need to have a very independent life whereby they can earn their living and have a comfortable and a peaceful life.